Happy Tuesday, Bernie Bobcats. It's Miss Carlson here for Quadrilaterals. We are on day 5, I believe. So I hope that you have enjoyed the videos so far. Yesterday's video, we went through all of the different quadrilaterals that you will need to know. We talked about 5 different ones. So we've talked about rectangles, squares, trapezoids, rhombuses, and parallelograms. So my challenge to you is on a separate sheet of paper to draw and label each of those to the best of your ability. Then you can see what you know so far about them, but the challenge will be for you to write the attributes next to them. So yesterday we talked about how attributes are like characteristics. I like to think of character traits when it comes to reading a book. So when you look at the quadrilateral, what do you see to be able to describe it? So attributes. So next to each shape, I want you to write at least 2 attributes. Now, certain quadrilaterals like squares have more than just 2 attributes. So that can be an even extra bonus. So today, my job is not to go through each of the quadrilaterals again. We're going to do a quick briefing of it, but it's to explain to you that sometimes some of the quadrilaterals can fall into other quadrilateral categories as well. So I'm going to share my screen with you and show you this anchor chart right here with the different colors. So this is our quick rebriefing. So pause your video if you have not went ahead and drew the 5 shapes with the 2 attributes next to them, so you can check yourself here with me. So pause it and do that now. All right, so quadrilaterals have 4 sides and 4 angles. But then we have different types of quadrilaterals. So up at the top, the first one that they have in orange is a trapezoid. So a trapezoid is a special quadrilateral because it's the only one that has 1 pair of parallel sides. Top and bottom are parallel. Remember, they go in the same directions forever and ever without crossing over each other. They are parallel. A parallelogram in purple is a quadrilateral because the opposite sides are parallel and are equal in length. Okay, so these 2 sides are the same length and they're parallel. These 2 sides are the same length and they're parallel. That's what makes a parallelogram special. A rhombus is a parallelogram with all sides equal in length. And it also has these 2 sides are parallel and these 2 sides are parallel. All sides are the same and it has 2 pair of parallel sides. Well, remember, that sounds a lot like a square, except a square has an attribute that makes it very special, even more special than a rhombus. So a rhombus has congruent. Remember, that means equal in length. A rhombus has 4 sides that are congruent. So we'll come down to a square and go back to the rectangle. So a square is a parallelogram. Oh, do you see how it says it's a parallelogram? That means that a square is a parallelogram and it's also a square, because a parallelogram, it says that it has to have opposite sides that are equal in length and parallel. Well, a square has opposite sides that are equal in length and parallel. So you're starting to see that sometimes the quadrilateral isn't just named one thing. Sometimes it falls under a different category as well. I'm going to show you the anchor chart in a video by what I mean next. So a square is a parallelogram with all right angles. So a square has right angles. That's what makes it very, very unique. All sides are equal, but it says right here, this is the sentence that gets me. It says a square is also a rhombus and a rectangle. So a square is a rhombus and a rectangle. What do I mean by that? I'm going to show you my last one right here. So this anchor chart in the pretty colors over here, it looks like a flow chart where it kind of starts at the top and flows down to the bottom. Well, it says a quadrilateral is just any shape that has exactly 4 sides. Then it branches out into a parallelogram and a trapezoid. So a trapezoid is the only quadrilateral that has 1 pair of parallel sides. So a trapezoid is a trapezoid. A trapezoid is not called anything else because it only has 1 pair of parallel sides. While a parallelogram is a quadrilateral with 2 pairs of parallel sides. Well, guess what? A rectangle, a rhombus, and a square are also quadrilaterals that have 2 pairs of parallel sides. So a rectangle, a rhombus, and a square are also parallelograms. Well, a rectangle is a parallelogram that has right angles, and a rhombus is a parallelogram with 4 equal sides. Well, a square is a parallelogram that has 4 right angles and 4 equal sides. So a square can also be called a rectangle and a rhombus and a parallelogram. This chart is really important to look at. I know you're probably like, what, Miss Carlson, you just threw a lot at me. I'm going to show you a quick video on Khan Academy. You can go back and watch it for yourself, and they're going to explain what they mean by how it can fall under the same category. So just remember that some quadrilaterals share the same attributes. A rhombus and a square share a lot of the same attributes. They're not exactly the same. There's one big difference. If you remember, a square has 4 right angles, but a rectangle has 4 right angles. It has 2 pair of parallel sides, but its sides aren't all congruent like a rhombus's is, okay? So I'm going to share my screen with you on the Khan Academy video.
The geometric shape below. So the first name in question is a quadrilateral, and a quadrilateral is literally any closed shape that has 4 sides, and this is definitely a closed shape that has 4 sides, so it is definitely a quadrilateral. Next, we have to think about whether it is a parallelogram. A parallelogram is a quadrilateral that has 2 pairs of parallel sides, where in each pair they're opposite sides. And in this case, if you look at this side over here, it forms a 90-degree angle with this line, and this side over here also forms a 90-degree angle with this line over here. So these...
I'm going to pause because I don't think he explains these little tick marks. So these 2 sides right here have 2 tick marks. That means that this side and this side are congruent. Those tick marks mean, hey, this side is the same length as this side. Now, top and bottom only have 1 because that's saying, hey, this side is the same length as this side. If all the sides were the same length, it would have 2 tick marks going around, or sometimes just 1. But you want to find the other line that has the same looking tick mark, and that means that they are congruent or equal.
These two sides are parallel, and then you can make the exact same argument for the other 2 sides. This line up here forms a 90-degree angle with this side, and so does this side forms a 90-degree angle with this line right over here. They form the same angle with this line. They're parallel. So this side is parallel to that side right over there. So this is definitely also a parallelogram.
So as you can see, he's checking it off as he goes. So he says, does it have 4 sides and 4 angles? Check, it's a quadrilateral. Now he's going down the line. Well, does it have 2 pair of parallel sides? And that's where he drew the arrows. So the 2 arrows from top and bottom mean these 2 sides are parallel. The 1 arrow over here and the 1 arrow over here mean these 2 sides are parallel. So he's checking off as he goes. So follow along with him. He's going to do a trapezoid next. Think about what makes a trapezoid very unique and see if we think the shape can fit under the trapezoid cloud.
Next, we ask about a trapezoid. Now, a trapezoid is interesting. Sometimes a trapezoid is defined as any quadrilateral having at least 1 pair of parallel sides. Sometimes it's defined as having only 1 pair of parallel sides. So let me write this down. Trapezoid. There's a debate here. It's not completely settled. Some people say at least 1 pair of parallel sides. That's one definition, one possible definition. The other one is at exactly 1 pair of parallel sides. And this becomes, which definition you pick, actually, it depends. How we answer this question depends on which definition for a trapezoid we pick. Now, the one that people most refer to is actually this one right over here, exactly 1 pair of parallel sides. So the trapezoid that most people, when you think of a trapezoid, they think of something like this, where this side over here is parallel to that side over here, and those 2 are not parallel. But sometimes you'll also see this at least 1 pair of parallel sides, and so this would include parallelograms. It would be inclusive of parallelograms because parallelograms have 2 pairs of parallel sides. But I'm going to go with this definition right over here, exactly 1 pair of parallel sides. This has 2 pairs of parallel sides, so I will not call it a trapezoid. But it's always important to clarify what people are talking about, because some people might say a trapezoid is at least 1 pair of parallel sides, and if we used that definition, then we would call it a trapezoid. So it really depends on the definition that you're using.
we're going to use the one that is exactly one pair of parallel sides. So by looking at this shape, I see two pair of parallel sides, and a trapezoid has one. So therefore, this shape could not be considered a trapezoid.
Now let's go on to rhombus. So a rhombus is a quadrilateral where four of the sides are congruent. Four of the sides are congruent. So a rhombus will look like this. All four sides have the same length. They're not necessarily at right angles to each other. This figure over here, we have two pairs of sides that are the same length, but there's no information that tells us that this side is equal to that side or that this side is equal to that side. So we can't make the claim that this is necessarily a rhombus. We don't know for sure. If someone told us that this length is equal to that length, then things change. But for the sake of this one, we're not going to go with the rhombus. Rectangle is essentially a parallelogram that has four right angles. And we already established this is a parallelogram, and it also has four right angles. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is a rectangle. Another way to think about a rectangle is opposite sides have the same length, and you have four right angles. So this is definitely a rectangle. A square, a couple of ways you could think about a square. You could view a square as a rhombus with four right angles. So if you were to kind of straighten it out a little bit, it's a rhombus, so all the four sides are the same, and you have four right angles. That's one way to think about a square. Or you could view it as a rectangle where all four sides are congruent. But in either case, you have to have all four sides be congruent in order to be a square. And we already established when we ruled out this being a rhombus that all four sides here are not necessarily congruent. You have two pairs of congruent sides, but we don't know whether this side and this side are congruent. So we cannot call this a square. So it's not a square, not a rhombus, not a trapezoid by the definition we picked, which is the less inclusive version where you say exactly one pair of parallel sides. It is a quadrilateral, it is a parallelogram, it is a rectangle.
Okay, so
Which of the following
like how he describes it. He talks about how he went through his list. So tomorrow I'm going to draw some shapes or some quadrilaterals, and we're going to go through and determine, do we think it's a quadrilateral? Do we think it's a parallelogram? And then go from there. So just refer back to, I really like this anchor chart right here with the different colors, how it kind of like a flow chart. It starts at the top and then it branches out. So a trapezoid is kind of like its lone wolf over here because it only has one pair of parallel sides, and no other quadrilaterals we talk about has just one pair. So it's kind of off to the side. But all the other ones we talk about can kind of go with the parallelogram. So pay attention to the flow chart, watch the video again if you need to, and tomorrow we're going to dissect it a little further together. So great job today, Bobcats. I hope you have a wonderful Tuesday.